check these bills out. These bills represent the Bank of England, and this Elizabeth II note really represents the culmination, I should say, of centuries of currency development. Each denomination here celebrates a notable figure from British history. These, of course, also comprise the latest two editions of the banknotes. We have this one, we have this one, with this one. If you look closely, the 5 and 10 are polymer notes. So this is an older edition, 20-pound note starting in the mid-aughts, the 2000 aughts, that is. So paper. We have Adam Smith. Adam Smith was an Enlightenment leader. He's actually from Scotland. And we see here the divisional labor and pin manufacturing, and the great increase in the quantity of work that results. So what is this pin manufacturing? Sorry, one moment. So yeah, the 20-pound Adam Smith note. He was the father of modern economics, to start with. Yeah, a Scottish Enlightenment leader, and he really shaped 18th century intellectual thought alongside close friend David Hume, shifting philosophy towards logic, human nature, and practical economics. And he really used this simple pin factory example as exemplified and noted on the 20-pound note to illustrate how breaking production into small steps, also known as the divisional labor, exponentially increased worker productivity and wealth. And this is also known as the pin factory paradigm. He also coined an important phrase called the invisible hand. And this iconic metaphor explained how individuals pursuing their own self-interest inadvertently fuels broader economic prosperity and market balance. He also attacked heavy-handed government monopolies and colonial trade restrictions, arguing instead that free trade without tariffs maximizes national wealth. This is also known as the critique of mercantilism. And he's of course, famous for The Wealth of Nations, but he also has a lesser known book called The Theory of Moral Sentiments. And it's actually considered by many to be his most important work. And this work argued that human empathy balances cold economic self-interest. Maybe we need another Adam Smith today. But in any case, his landmark text laid the literal blueprint for modern global capitalism, heavily shifting Western economic policies toward free markets for centuries. And this is really the global policy blueprint that has really shaped the modern world for centuries now. Free markets, and he really is a pioneer and a spearhead for capitalism as we know it today. So continuing on, I have the 20. I don't have a 5, 10, or 50, so we'll proceed with the paper 5-pound note. And just to go back to Adam Smith for a second, this pound series lasted from 2007 to 2020. Elizabeth Fry, she is featured on the 5-pound note that lasted from 2002 to 2016. She was, of course, known as the Angel of Prisons. But her origins, she was a Quaker, and driven by her deep Quaker faith, she viewed every individual as possessing inner light, which fueled her lifelong dedication to helping the forgotten margins of society. And her reform journey, of course, starting in the prisons, began in 1813 after visiting London's notorious Newgate prison, where she found hundreds of women and children crammed into filthy, lawless, and destitute conditions. And this is also known as the Newgate Gale shock. And As a result, she was galvanized to found a dedicated association for female prisoners, providing them with clean clothes, religious instruction, and sewing materials so they could earn their own money. And this led to the Association for Improvement. And continuing on, she became the first woman to give evidence to a House of Commons committee, directly influencing the Gales Act of 1823, which legally mandated sex segregated prisons and female guards. And this really rolled out the foundations for her political influence. And as a result, her reform blueprint spread globally, leading her to travel across Europe to inspect prisons, inspire foreign royalty, and advise on more humane penal systems. And beyond prisons, she established a highly influential nursing school that inspired Florence Nightingale. And Florence Nightingale was a very important nurse in the Crimean War. I think that occurred in 1860s, 1870s, mid to late 19th century. She also set up, going back to Elizabeth Fry, of course, she set up soup kitchens and also created a dynamic system of libraries for lonely coast guards. So, yeah, £5 note from 2002 to 2016. And then, yeah, let's go back actually to Elizabeth Fry. So I mentioned Florence Nightingale. She was only the second woman after Florence Nightingale, or Elizabeth Fry was only the second woman after Florence Nightingale to be featured on a Bank of England note. I guess this is exception. Is this with exception to the Queen Elizabeth II herself? So interesting fact there. Then on the £10 note, which lasted from 2000 to 2017, we have Charles Darwin. I'm sure this man needs no introduction, but he was a pioneer naturalist and biologist who wrote the theory of evolution within On the Origin of Species. So Charles Darwin spent five foundational years from 1831 to 1836 surveying the globe on the HMS Beagle, collecting the vast biological and geological specimens that eventually unlocked his theories of evolution. So as a result, his paper Banknote beautifully showcased a portrait of him, as you can see here, alongside the research ship HMS Beagle and a hummingbird. I guess the hummingbird being an important bird of the Galapagos Islands of modern-day Ecuador. So his observations of distinct variations among, whoops. So Charles Darwin's observations of distinct variations among mockingbirds and finches on individual Galapagos Islands provided the crucial spark for his ideas on evolutionary adaptation. And because of the religious climate at the time, Charles Darwin was terrified of the religious and social backlash his radical ideas would cause, or he theorized would cause, similar to a Galileo Galilei scenario. So Charles Darwin did his work in quiet and accumulated evidence for over 20 years before finally publishing On the Origin of Species. And he was forced to publish On the Origin of Species in 1859 after a young naturalist, Alfred Russel Wallace, of Wallace line fame. He made a distinction of the flora and fauna that demarcated Asian flora and fauna from Austro-Pacific, and the line runs through Indonesia. But so going back to Charles Darwin, he had to release his work to not be accused of plagiarism against Wallace's work when Wallace arrived at nearly identical conclusions on natural selection. And Charles Darwin, from there, boldly extended his theories to human evolution in 1871, arguing that humans shared common ancestors with primates and introducing the concept of sexual selection. And although he did have conflict with certain entities of the Church of England over his scientific conclusions, Charles Darwin's monumental impact earned him a state burial alongside Isaac Newton. And Isaac Newton, of course, had his own avant-garde theories about gravity. So very, very honoring burial that Charles Darwin had alongside a similar scientist as in Isaac Newton. So continuing on here, we have Matthew Boulton and James Watt on the 50-pound note. This series extended from 2001 to 2021. These were two industrial pioneers, but I'll start off with the history of Matthew Boulton. So Matthew Boulton established a revolutionary enterprise near Birmingham in 1766, pioneering assembly line techniques to produce high-quality metalware and art on an unprecedented scale. This is also known as the Soho Manufactory, and he functioned as a crucial financial engine and business strategist behind the steam revolution, rescuing a brilliant but heavily indebted James Watt from bankruptcy. And yeah, Matthew Boulton was really an industrial matchmaker who successfully lobbied the British Parliament to extend Watt's crucial steam engine patent, securing the long-term commercial foundation for their world-changing partnership. And this led to the transformation of steam engines from simple, localized mine pumping machines into versatile rotary power sources that ran textile mills and factories worldwide. So Matthew Boulton's, of course, here. And from there, Matthew Boulton also revolutionized currency production by applying steam engine power to coin pressing, creating highly precise, counterfeit-proof coins for Britain and nations worldwide. So we have a lot to thank Matthew Boulton for. And lastly, Boulton also hosted the Lunar Society, a legendary group of elite scientists, industrialists, and artists who met during full moons to debate cutting-edge technology and social progress. So continuing on to James Watt here, he was the engine, no pun intended, to this duo. So James Watt achieved a monumental breakthrough by realizing existing Newcomen engines wasted immense energy heating and cooling the same cylinder, leading him to invent the separate condenser. And his master invention in the separate condenser cut steam engine fuel consumption by up to 75%, transforming steam from an expensive luxury into an affordable, ubiquitous industrial power source. And this, of course, powered railroads and train cars going forward. And this is, a remarkable and radical efficiency gain with the separate condenser. Watt also engineered the sun and planet gear system to seamlessly convert the up and down motion of a steam piston into smooth, continuous circular motion for factory wheels. So gearboxes, etc. We have a lot to thank Watt for. And Watt also invented the very ubiquitous and famous concept of horsepower to help mathematically explain the immense strength of his engines to skeptical buyers, leading the scientific community to name the watt the unit of power after him. And beyond that, beyond massive steam engines, Watt invented a highly successful portable mechanical document copier to easily duplicate business letters and engineering drawings. Watt was a little bit troubled. He was a very troubled mind in the midst of his industrial output and inventions. He suffered from intense bouts of anxiety and perfectionism, frequently delaying his breakthroughs until Boulton's business discipline pushed him to finalize and commercialize his designs. So we really can't have one without the other in this partnership that is displayed on the 50-pound note. So this 50-pound note design holds historical significance as it was the very last paper-based note series issued by the Bank of England before the Alan Turing polymer edition arrived. The polymer edition of the 50-pound note, that is. So that's all I have for the that's all I have for the early 2000s to late 2010s and early 2020s paper edition Great British Pound sterling notes, Bank of England notes, that is. And for next video, I will cover the polymer edition that started in the 2010s and is the contemporary lineup of notes for the Great British Pound the Bank of England has. So once again, I thank you for tuning in and catch you next time. See you in the next one.